Hello, I'm JohntheFish and I'm going to tell you about an add-on called Universal Content Puller Charts. And to show you some of its capabilities, what we're going to be doing is taking some data from a Google Sheet that's publicly available on the web and first pulling it into a table and then showing that table as a chart. Now, as it says on my opening page here, if you can pull data into a table with Universal Content Puller, you can show it in a chart using Universal Content Puller Charts. For our demonstration, we have an empty page ready to put a Universal Content Puller block onto, and we have the Google Sheet that we're going to pull data from. This is some player statistics from the Rugby World Cup of 2015. The data we're interested in is these first two columns, which is the country and the number of caps. The caps is a measure of player appearances. So it's showing that New Zealand is the most experienced country. We want to take this data and show it as a chart and organise the countries alphabetically. To do this, we need to start off with this squiggly code at the top of the Google Sheet, because that identifies the sheet. So let's now go to our page. We're going to add a Universal Content Puller to the page. And we're going to source it from a Google Sheet. We could also source it from a URL or from anywhere. But this is a quick way of getting a Google Sheet address in. And we only want the first layer of that sheet. Now it will default to the first layer anyway, layer 0. But I'm just being sure here. We'll cache the source so we don't bother Google too often with the standard cache duration. Now the transform. We need to do two things here. We need to get the sheet and slice it up as we want it, and then we need to sort it. So we actually need two transforms. So what we're going to do is use a pipeline transform, which is a way of chaining other transforms together. So having started with a pipeline, the first stage of our pipeline is to get the table from a CSV. This little crescent means that the two stages of the transform are incompatible, or later down. We're going to sort that out as we go by adding subsequent transforms in the display. So these crescents will disappear before we get round to saving the page. We're going to get a table from a CSV. We're not going to skip anything. We're going to use the first row as headings. We only want two columns. So let's specify that we only want the first two columns. Column slicing and row slicing indexes from 0. Everything else within Universal Content Puller indexes from 1, but because row and column slicing are very programmy thing, they index from 0. We're going to transpose the rows and columns, so rather than having countries going down the column, we're going to have countries going across the page. Then our next transform will be to sort this. So let's go down here and find table sorter at the bottom. And we're going to sort it by a row, which is the row of countries, which is the first row. And that should be our data ready to display. So now we will display it in a table, just to get an idea of what the data looks like. And for our first row, we'll take the keys, or capitalized keys, of an associative array. And for our column headings, we're going to take the first row, which is the list of countries. And because we're now using this as a heading, we don't actually want to show it in the body of the table, so we'll filter it out. It's only a two or a heading and one row table, so table styling isn't really that important, but I'll stripe it and I'll condense it, and I'll put a highlight on hover just as a matter of course. Most tables look better that way. Let's see what it looks like. So here we have our data from the Google Sheet, now organised by country alphabetically with the number of caps below. We want to show this as a bar chart next. So let's go back into Edit. And we'll change the display from a table to a chart from the table. And we want to show it as a bar chart using the column heading and rows. We'll make it 60% height of its width. This is a fixed aspect ratio. So it's going to go for the whole width of the page, but only 60% as high as it is wide. And we'll give it a bit of padding. We could set a different ratio on small screens to make it more phone friendly if we wanted to, and we'll show it once it's doesn't really matter too much because the page is going to be visible straight away, but we'll put in a 50% threshold, so that means that it's got to be 50% onto the page before it'll actually start doing the animation to render the chart. Grid color, we could change the grid color. We're going to leave this as the default grey, and the line width we're going to leave as the default line width, which is about 1 pixel. Now we can add a legend to the chart. The columns are going to be the country or the team, and the row legend will be the number of caps. We're not going to show any labels to start with, and we'll have a default format tooltip. There's our data as it was in the table display. I'll leave that as it is. Now we need to colour it. Now I could start adding colours one by one by clicking this plus button, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste a whole load in. That's stuff already on the clipboard. I'm going to go and get some colours from elsewhere. And I'm now going to take those colours into the clipboard and I'm going to paste them onto the fill. So we've got, for each bar, we've got a fill and a border. And at the moment the fill and the border are the same colour, but I'd like to lighten the fill colour. I can do that globally by making it a little bit lighter with this slider. So there's our fills and there's our borders. Let's make the borders 2 pixels wide and give them a radius of 2 pixels. Final thing we're going to do is label the axes, or position the axes I should say, and work out how they scale. Now for the row axis we're just going to show the scale, and for the column axis, because we've got bars, we need to leave a little bit of room for the bars, so we're going to offset the scale a little bit from the row axis. Everything else we'll leave automatic. The chart library is pretty good at guessing what data looks like, but we could go for logarithmic scales, time scales, inverse scales, all sorts of things. Let's save that and see what our chart looks like. And here we have our chart. Teams along the bottom, number of caps up the side, and when we hover a bar it tells us which country and the number of caps. I think I'll modify this now to actually add labels for the number of caps in there. Now we've actually got, for every bar, 2 items of data. We've got the country and the number of caps. Keep that in mind for a minute. So back into the edit, and let's go down our chart to the labels section. We're going to put tooltips in the labels in the center of every bar, and the default will be country and number of caps. We want the values only, but we don't want to show the country within that. So there's country and number of caps, 2 items of data. We don't want the first item and we do want the second item. With more complex charts you'll probably want to put all the values in and then come back and decide which ones that you want to eliminate by masking them here. But for simple charts you can predict what it's going to do. Let's save again and publish. And there we have bars with labels on them showing what the value is. We could work with this further. We could reposition the labels within the bars. We could maybe colour the bars according to the team colours, so that we could have New Zealand in black and England in white and Ireland in green. But, I think you get the idea that we've taken some data, pulled in off the web and turned it into a bar chart. You could grab data from anywhere. You could even grab data with a SQL expression from your Concrete 5 database and show it as a bar chart, or as any other sort of chart. Let's have a quick look at the other capabilities of Universal Content Pillar charts. Here's where we started, with some data of flights for unknown airports in the 58, 59 and 60 as a bar chart. On the website I have got this same data in a number of other formats. Here's the basic table of data. Here's the bar chart we just looked at. Here's the same data as a stacked bar chart. Doesn't make so much sense for this particular bit of data, but it's just showing the capability of this add-on. I could show it as a line chart, or I could add a bit of smoothing to that line chart and put some points and values on it. I could wrap it round, seeing its calendar data. December comes back to January. Here we have it as a radar chart with the 3 years, showing growth of traffic over those 3 years. Here we have the same data as a pie chart, where we've shown just 1958 as a pie, and we've shown June of each of the 3 years as a pie, with a key underneath. Or we could do a donut chart, which is all 3 years, 3 pies wrapped together with a hole in the middle. There are a few other charts that UCP charts can do, and it's designed to be extensible. So if you don't find the chart that you want in the examples or documentation, contact me and I can advise you on just what is possible, because there are a lot of capabilities that I haven't shown here. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.